Thank you, Nisarg, for that introduction. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Nisarg, once again. A very warm welcome to all the attendees on this second session of Nimai Knowledge Conclave. We sincerely appreciate your time. For those who have just joined, I'm Sagar Agarwal, Chief Investment Officer and Managing Partner at Nimai Capital. We are a private equity platform investing in tech and non-tech financial services opportunities in emerging markets of Africa, India, South Asia, with an aim of creating financial inclusion and impact at scale. This is the second session, as Nisarg mentioned, of Knowledge Conclave. We started this series in June to create a forum where we can bring industry stalwarts, leaders, to share their views with us on various relevant topics. Our first session was on private equity in a post-COVID environment, where we had guests and speakers from Mubadala, Broadspeak, King & Spalding, etc. Today on this session, we have more than 500 participants, attendees from around the world. We have participants from Kenya, we have participants from Tanzania, Uganda, Nigeria. So a lot of participants from Africa. We have participants from GCC, we have participants from India, Southeast Asia, South Asia for that matter. So across the board, we've got more than 500 participants. We also have our friends and partners, Victoria Commercial Bank from Kenya, attending this event. We have members from ICI Association of India and the Jito community as well. Thanks to the technology today, we can have a truly global session from the comfort of our homes. Mostly, I would also like to thank my partners, Pankaj, Captain Sunil, Nisarg, for putting together this conclave platform together. And also making it reach newer heights in every session. I think we are able to come together as a group to discuss, share views. So once again, thanks everyone to joining us on this session. It's a session on leadership, discover the leader inside you. As Nisarg mentioned, not taking away much time from you guys, I want to quickly introduce Dr. Khandelwal. He is known to most of you in UAE in East Africa because of his interactions with you in different programs, forums. The overwhelming response to this session shows his popularity. He's a battle-tested leader, a leader who's demonstrated his leadership skills in various assignments, more particularly as a Bank of Baroda chairman, for which he was honored as the Asia's highest banking award. He's got a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Asian Banker of Singapore. He truly epitomizes the theme of today's topic, which is leadership. He was born in a middle-class family, educated in municipal schools, learned the first alphabets of English at the age of 10, and he studied in municipal parks. He eventually became a best-selling author, writing 7 books, and 2 are still under preparation. He is a much admired and sought-after global keynote speaker. He's spoken at Wharton, he's spoken at Commonwealth Business Council. He's been a UN consultant. He's a visiting professor at Asian Howard, Asian Institute of Management, Manila. So ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to Dr. Khandelwal. Let's discover the leader inside all of us. It's a 40 to 45 minute session for Dr. Khandelwal, and then for which we'll follow up with a Q&A. Dr. Khandelwal, welcome to Nimai Knowledge Conclave. Thank you once again for taking out time for us and for all attendees. Over to you.
Well, Sagar, thank you very much for the very generous introduction. I don't know whether it deserves, but anyway. So today, or not post, in the midst of this pandemic, I find numerous seminars, discussions on leadership. Leadership has been a very dazzling concept. In fact, so much so that you put on Google leadership, there are 349 million, you are referred to 349 million sites in less than a minute. Such is the dazzling, over-talked, and it is so much over-glamorized subject that sometimes I wonder, and so many books on leadership. Every year, I understand, over 5,000 and more books are produced on leadership. There are blogs, there are articles, there are seminars, and it is a $300 billion industry in the world. And yet, world suffers from deficit of leadership, but there is so much talk about leadership. Recently, one of the very prominent professor of Stanford University, Pfeiffer, he wrote a book called Leadership Bullshit, where he has questioned the entire entire business of leadership training. Anyway, that apart, the fact remains leadership is important, but we seem to have grossly misunderstood leadership, because leadership is, it's not to be hyped. The leadership is not outside, the leadership is inside. And that's the topic today that I'm going to discuss, that leadership is within. How do we extricate leadership from ourselves? And how do we really find out within ourselves the hidden leadership? That's the subject that I'm going to talk about. And so I would like to begin with this theme that leadership is not a rocket science, first of all. And leadership is hierarchy neutral. A clerk can demonstrate a leadership as much as the managing director of the company. And sometimes the managing director may not have leadership, but a junior officer can demonstrate leadership. So let me share that it's very mythical that when you become somebody, you become a leader. In fact, the problem is that leaders are letting down the leadership because they have not been able to play the role that they are supposed to be playing. So I would like to, I have developed, I don't want to be sounding didactic in talking too much. So I'd like to share some of the slides that I have developed so that people can look at what is my concept of leadership. So I'd like to show you the first one. Just a minute. Just a minute. Oh, you have got with you. You can also show.
I have the presentation, Doctor. Yeah.
So you just show that, the first one.
I will.
Yeah, first of all, there are thousands and thousands of definitions of leadership. The best I like is that a leader is an individual who significantly affects the thoughts, feelings, and behavior of a significant number of individuals. That means a leader is one who inspires a significant number of people. And what Mahatma Gandhi said, you must be the change you want to see in the world. So how come we remember in this world with so many billion people around, only a few people we talk about? We talk about Gandhi, we talk of Nelson Mandela, we talk of Martin Luther King, we talk of Abdul Kalam, and that means the very few people who have inspired a significant number of people. And then, of course, there are corporate honkos who have inspired whole generation of people in our own country, Narayan Murthy's and Tata's and who not. Next. Now, I think in order to understand leadership and in order to understand what is the block to leadership, it's important to understand who are non-leaders. What is it that obstructs our leadership? And look at it. The people for whom it's all about me and me, self-centered, know-all, wishy-washy, untrustworthy, indecision, vindictive, power-hungry, saying-doing gap, lack of integrity, ego, arrogance, misuse of authority, poor listening, unethical, greed, bullies, micromanagement, weak. These are all traits of non-leaders. And this list is developed by me in my training programs when I ask senior participants to imagine their bosses that they experienced as toxic bosses that they would not like to work again with. The bosses who occupy top positions, but what is it that they were worried about them? What is it that they could not give their best to such people? And then they listed that the people in positions or people in power, how leadership is seen by them, a position of perquisites and power rather than a position of responsibility and accountability. And if I have to put three main characteristics of any good leader, it is one, whether people can trust their leader, the credibility, whether they can be trusted for what they are speaking, for what they are doing, and believe in them, or they see them as some sort of bullies, that they are merely utilizing their leadership position to sermonize them, because they are at the pulpit of organization that they can issue sermons. I think the most important thing, and believe me, even the smallest man understands whether he or she should believe in his leader, what he's talking. And therefore, it is a very, very personalized thing which rests inside us. And therefore, we have to understand out of this list my own awareness about this. Am I a procrastinator? Am I unfocused? Do I support my people? Am I unethical? Do I micromanage? Do I suffer from jealousy? Am I a compromiser? Now, do I lack humility? Do I lack compassion? Each one of us, we are not perfect, let me tell you. None of us is perfect. Sometimes we attribute lot of meaning to some of the small angularities in leader. Think of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, whose funeral was attended by heads of states or former heads of state like Clinton. Who was this man? Nobody liked to work with him because of his temperamental problem. But his temperament alone was not a problem. His vision for product, his vision for future. And today Steve Jobs has left so many products for us that today we are able to talk like this. Probably he and some others have contribution to this kind of technology and the product that we have got. So I think it is mythical that leaders are ideal. None of them is ideal. Gandhi has been criticized for many things. Nelson Mandela was very violent in his early life. Martin Luther King has been accused of plagiarism and his other escapades. So therefore, leaders are assessed basically for what have they worked for higher order purpose. Purpose is very important for leader. And this purpose is beyond self-centeredness. This purpose is beyond himself. This purpose is to raise the level of others in the society. And therefore, today if we remember great leaders, it is for what they really did. But if we start finding fault in everyone, there are a huge number of faults. Many leaders have been short-tempered. So what? It's a small angularity, given the fact that they have contributed so much to resurrect their organizations, to resurrect humanity, to bring resurgence around communities. Next, please. So now this is the leadership ladder, I call it. That if we have to move from there to here, what is it that leaders actually are, leadership is all about, and what is it that leaders actually do? One is vision and higher purpose, as I was talking. They are not clerks of works. They are not number crunchers. They don't think of next Monday. They don't think of quarterly results as much as they are obsessed. They have a vision and a higher purpose that they want to create their organization, the society, the community, which can flourish, which can achieve, which can get rid of its problems in this manner. The other thing in leaders is, in my ladder, passion for change. They are maniac for change. They are not status quoist. They are not the people who are discomforted by the fact that the change brings discomfort. It brings unpopularity. It makes you vulnerable to a lot of criticism. They are unidirectional, that come what may, They are not there for personal aggrandizement or personal popularity, and they pursue change. The third is that they empower all stakeholders, especially the employees and customers. This empowerment is extremely important for leaders, and therefore they are not centralizers. They're not the people who are overwise. They're not the people who are know all people. They are the people who work with people, and they have a tremendous facility in interpersonal competence, relationship building, motivating people, engaging them. And the next in my ladder is high credibility. As I was telling in my earlier slide that saying doing gap has to be minimum. We are all assessed. If you see TV debates in the evening, all the time TV debates are like this. You were talking the other day like this. Today you are talking like this. Today you are in this party, you are doing this. Yesterday you were in that party, you were criticizing. I think the greatest thing is credibility. You look at a small girl, a small, not even, I think now, of course, adult, like Malala or Thunberg, of what amount of credibility they have got of that saying doing gap, that they have become world figures, that they are not only sermonizing, they are doing, they are first experimenting. The Gandhi's experiment with truth made him Gandhi. As Nelson Mandela said, you gave us Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, we made him Mahatma Gandhi. This saying doing gap, that this, so therefore, inside us, now nobody can bring this reduction in gap inside us. No outsider can bring. We have to bring. Daily we have to think, what is it that I'm doing something which is contrary to what I spoke? The other in my ladder is ethical, compassionate, and empathetic. I think ethical is a difficult thing. Many people say ethics don't work, but I say they don't work, but they matter. It's so important. Next is curiosity and learning. It's so important, I tell you, so important. Many leaders think that who can teach them? They have years of experience, years of wisdom. And I think one of the problem is that most leaders have operational mindset. They don't have organizational mindset, that they can think of future, they can think of things that matter. Now, I was recently hearing on video a lecture from Narayan Murthy, and he was sharing that when they started this company, how they were learning, how Mohandas Pai was teaching them finance to the entire top management, and how Fanish Murthy was teaching them marketing, because they were pure technical people. I come from banking industry, and today there is so much need to learn about digitalization, about the new products, about the, how to work with so many changes. We need to have people who are coaching the top management. And therefore, this reverse learning is very important. And then, of course, communication and listening. I won't elaborate too much on this. And at the end of the day, a leader has to be a reflective practitioner. I can give a big lecture here. It itself will not result in anything. Sachin Tendulkar can come and give a big lecture on how to play cricket. Unless a budding cricketer follows him, practices, follows his every move, looks at his videos, looks at his game, it doesn't work. I can say I want to be a good listener, but every time I falter on that, and I don't spend time on reflection every single day, where did I falter? Why did I not listen? So for me, it's very important that leadership is not about sermons. It is a disciplined practice. Leadership is a disciplined practice, and therefore everyone can practice leadership. Every single person can practice leadership. A small employee can practice leadership. A small manager can practice leadership. It is hierarchy neutral. And much of the frustration in organizations is that at different levels of organization, people have better level of leadership sometimes than their bosses. The bosses may have a greater domain knowledge, a greater operational knowledge. But when it comes to leadership, one has to understand that it's about being an integrated human being. Next, please. Next slide. So then I was just thinking how to go about leadership. So I got this concept of fitness. We always talk, youngsters are today moving, walking, going to gym. So we need to go to a leadership gym now. And leadership, as I talked all that, leadership requires a whole lot of gymming exercise. What all we need to develop, they can be put first, physical fitness, stamina, being agile, alert, personal discipline, focus, and a good sleep. And I would strongly recommend a book which has recently come, Why We Sleep, one of the best books that one can go through. Now, all these things require a whole lot of personal discipline, especially those, let us say, who don't go for a walk, and every day they find a reason not to go for a walk, rather than a reason for going for a walk. And I have seen some inveterate walkers who will walk in sun, rains, I mean, whatever the weather. They will walk, if it's raining, they will walk in their basement. But they are so, I tell you, they are walking alcoholics kind of a people, that they will walk somehow. This kind of personal commitment, this kind of stamina, and this kind of agility is fundamental to leadership. Whether it is improving any leadership quality, this is fundamental. The second is professional fitness, our learnability, our applied curiosity, our discerning ability to separate the chaff from the grain and connecting the dots across the domains. Today, we don't work in a single domain. We work in different domains. And how do we connect the dots? And I think professional fitness is very important. Great organizations today spend 25 to 30% of their working time in learning sessions. There is so much of change that is taking place across. And each of these require personal commitment. Third is ethical fitness, ethical architecture. What is my ethical architecture? What is my personal, what should I say, article of association, as in the case of company? What is my personal charter? What do I want to do? And courage to stand up for the right and speak up, and fairness. Now, they may sound, actually, now tell me, if you release this thing from you that you want to be fair in dealing with people, you are on your journey to leadership. Do you require a training session in Harvard for this? Perhaps not. Do you require a training session in Stanford for this? No. You require a reflective session and a disciplined practice in the night to think, was I fair in dealing with that situation? Was I fair to that person in denying an appointment? Was I fair? Did I favor that person because he worked with me? These are questions that one must ask, reflect. Did I talk about emotional fitness? Yeah. We have all heard Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence, and big Harvard books are there on that. If you look at it, this whole concept of emotional fitness has come from Indian scriptures. It has come from our Upanishads. It has come from our Gita. Americans have made a whole science out of it. Fair enough. They have done good amount of research on that. Self-knowledge. Know thyself. How much I know about myself, my biases, my preferences, my orientation, my caste orientation, my regional orientations. So when we sit on leadership table or leadership chair, we need to understand, we need to be aware of our orientation and be very sensitive about it. Emotional regulation. This emotional regulation is all about managing our emotions. Am I like a electric fuse which goes very fast and the all electricity inside me has gone? Or do I hear, I deliberate, I show patience? This is the most difficult part, but nevertheless, by disciplined practice, we can improve our level of. Having said that, I should say, I strongly believe anger can be functional anger. Anger can be dysfunctional. Functional anger is that if you don't get unhappy about the status quo, you cannot transform an organization. You should be angry about. Gandhi was angry about discrimination, racial discrimination, and therefore he started the anti-freedom movement. You got to be functionally angry. There's nothing like that anger is always bad. Level of empathy, compassion, very, very important. In today's high performance culture, we have forgotten compassion. Not to question how and why, but do and die. Young people tell me that in this COVID environment, working from home means up to 11, the bosses are saying, I want this slide at 12:30 in the night. You don't have time to eat, you don't have time to relax, you don't have this, and there is no compassion. I think these are very dysfunctional style of working and leadership. High performance goes with high compassion. High performance minus compassion is extremely dysfunctional and demotivating. And we got to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. When you bring about a change, there is a discomfort. This discomfort is new comfort, because things are not going to remain static. Things are going to change. And therefore, we have to so prepare our emotional side that we are able to have some sort of an internal dialysis machine which continuously de-stresses us, which continuously vacuum cleans us in terms of our stresses, saying it easier. But I think with yoga, with meditation, with reflective thinking, much of this is possible. And of course, resilience, that if we have fallen from the high performing organization to low performing organization, or if there are some personal issues where I have lost an opportunity, this resilience is very important to come back and with renewed vigor. And finally, spiritual fitness. Now, this spiritual fitness, earlier we thought it has some religious connotations. It is not. It has no religious connotations. It has a very deep-rooted, but needs a deep-rooted understanding of the self in these. The meaning of life. If we start thinking the meaning and the purpose that I talked about, it sets us thinking, it puts us in touch with the real world. That there in this cosmos, there are forces beyond us. The second is self-control. If we develop our nature, which is only materialistic, which is only running after attachments, which is only that I have this position, let me have the maximum number of foreign trips, let me manufacture this trip somehow, let me go there, let me connect with so many people, let me develop my relationship, let me do this, let me do that, let me do that. This is all about me. So therefore, this self-control is extremely important, very, very important. that I define myself and I don't run after power centers. I don't run after, I know that who am I and how much I need. And this lack of self-control and running after the world, this lack of self-control, which can lead to misuse of power and authority, which can move to self-aggrandizement, which can move to me, I, me, my highway. Now, the point is this: when you are in leadership role, you have power. And this power is to help others. This power is to help your organization. This power is to create future of your organization. But if we start diverting this power for self-aggrandizement, if we start diverting this power to really give benefits to our own people or indulge in nepotism, and therefore Gita has elaborately talked about self-control. And it's so important for leaders to manage their instincts. And as I said, and I have been saying all along in this, that understanding is the center. Now, one can ask a question: how do I do all this? This looks a massive thing. Let me share something. The leadership is like a nuclear fission. It's a chain reaction. You don't have to do these 20 things. You don't have to do. When you, let us say, pick up one thing, let us say you want to become a more credible person, improving the saying doing gap. And you have achieved some amount of achievement in this, that yes, I'm reducing this. Simultaneously, there is a chain reaction that you become more authentic, that you become more real, that you don't speak untruth, that you become more humble, that you want to learn more from others. So therefore, there is a chain reaction in all this. It's not a single thing that I'm showing you here and you need to do courses in 25 things. Learnability, for example. Learnability will help us becoming more dependent on our subordinates, on our colleagues. It will make us humble to learn. A question: a couple of years back, I was in a panel with the famous Sharma, what is his name, who wrote, the man who lost his Ferrari, what is his name? That guy.
Robin Sharma.
Robin Sharma, sorry. And he told a beautiful thing, that every 90 days, he learned something new. It is stuck so much in my mind. I was at that time 59-year-old. I started always not able to learn swimming. Finally, at the age, I didn't drop. At the age of 63, I learned swimming. I never played any games because there was no opportunity in my childhood to play games. And slowly I experimented with this learning attitude. I learned some games. I now play table tennis, I play billiards, I play. So therefore, this learnability, I learned something very, very important in learning. For example, when I was learning swimming, a matriculate trainer was giving me instructions and I was jolly well taking his instructions. Yes, yes. How should I go about? Is this the right way to go about? How do I do this? How do I do that? So it makes us humble. I am only giving you one example for want of time. So next, Sagar, if there is a next slide, you can put. Now, finally, what I have practiced in my life and leadership journey. What is your personal charter? Credibility plus authenticity. Courage to change status quo. What are legacy issues? What are roadblocks? What are centers? What are rigidities? How do you change this? Third, smart conversations and communication. Now, smart means being very responsive, replying to and responding to every single communication that you receive. empowering roles and people. Now, you may have all power, but you need to see whether 3 levels below you empowered them, your people. And the other one is grit, your passion and perseverance. Then high concern for compassion, as I talked. Now, everyone you talk these days, they say, where is the time for all this? Time is the new poverty of powerful people. Time is the new poverty of leaders. So create the magical 25th hour. If I'm parsimonious about anything, it is my time. And I tell you, a parsimonious attitude to time can save you even 26th hour for your growth and learning. Then reveal and reflect. Reveal yourself. Be vulnerable. You are a human being. You can make mistakes. Share with your people what annoys you, why you are short-tempered, and reflect. Last but one I learned was for leaders to be visible, accessible, hands-on, and field-oriented. Each word is important. Be visible. There are people who come straight, go to their floor. Their people don't know who is their managing director. They hardly seen him. Accessibility. That they are available to meet people. Hands-on, that they are problem solvers. They are not the type who will say, I will look into the matter. And they don't get the time even after retirement to look into the matter. They're hands-on. I work with a boss, you go with a problem, he will pick up his phone, talk right at that time and solve the problem. And field orientation. The leaders are not ninth cloud managers or leaders. They're not the people who sit on 32nd or 45th floor and are not in touch with people. They are the people who have extreme field orientation. They understand what is happening in the field with customers, with operating managers, with other stakeholders, with vendors. And this to be learned from organizations like Hindustan Unilever, where even the chairman of Hindustan Lever is often seen almost selling soaps in the small towns of UP. And finally, if I can say, transformation, self, and the organization, and confronting the self, demolish the self. If you want to discover leadership inside you, you have to destroy the, the layers and layers of, that are deposited there. You have to open them, become a human being out of a general manager, out of a managing director, out of a senior man. You have to become a human being, touch yourself as a human being, start self-transformation, and go for bigger journey of transformation. I think I will stop here. I may have already crossed the time. This is such a fascinating subject. This is such a fascinating audience. I can't see, but I can feel them, most of them. Thank you very much, Sagar and Pankaj, for this opportunity, which I will cherish. If there are questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Khandelwal. This was an outstanding session. I think I personally, relearned the whole concept of leadership from scratch. I think, there are a lot of pearls of wisdoms to take away for everybody. Some very interesting topics you touched about: compassion, emotional intelligence, physical fitness, self-development. These are points that we talk about, we don't really follow, right? So I think today, by listening to you, it's made me realize that how these points are very, very important to become a leader, to identify that leader inside all of us, right? No, thank you once again, Doctor. There are a bunch of questions. I think I've been seeing people raising hands for some time now, and unfortunately, we could not take up those questions now. Let me start with a couple of questions, and I'm sure our participants also want to ask questions. But let me just try and summarize for you a couple of quick high-level questions, and then you can take it forward over there. So I think a lot of people are asking that, can you share some examples of your instances and situations, while you were at Bank of Baroda, while you were the chairman over there, where you have come into a challenging situation and your leadership quality helped it transform significantly. I've seen a couple of questions on your experience, your personal experience that people want to know about.
Sagar, I will talk what I learned in my organization journey. I joined in 1971 as a probationary officer.
Sure.
It was a very disturbed branch, lot of industrial relation problem, union problems, lot of things. And we were facing a lot of agitation. So I had a branch manager. One evening, all officers went to him and we told him, sir, today you should not go from this front gate. There are union leaders waiting there with the sticks in their hand, and it may be dangerous. And this man told us, no, I will go from the gate I entered. And in trepidation, we escorted him and he left. And I learned my first lesson in leadership, that it is about courage. If that day he would have gone by the back gate, the people would have thought, dar gaya, he's scared. That was my first lesson. I was 22-year-old and I learned that lesson. My second lesson was that the situation those days was so bad. I was not given any training. I came after doing my engineering. I was put on savings department. Nobody told me anything. While in the appointment letter, it was written, you will be given a training, this, that, and staff college. So I wrote a letter to then head of HR. Somebody said, no, you can't sustain it. It is a harakiri to write a letter to the top management. What do you think yourself? This man replied to me and solved number one problem. He will write, you have raised following issues, 1, 2, 3, all 4 is solved. And then I realized way back 49 years back, how responsiveness and communication is important in one's life. And that is the day I have responded to every single communication and message, unless it is abusive, in my life. And that has helped me in Bank of Baroda. It was my habit to personally answer 10 letters every day. And in 3 years, I wrote, personally dictated over 10,000 letters. Wow. And I could see the engagement of staff. As I moved in the hierarchy, I also saw a lot of non-leaders who were scared, who would not disturb status quo, who were arrogant. I learned from them how it affects others. So you not only learn from good leadership, you also learn from bad leadership. In fact, you learn more from bad leadership than the good leadership, because it affects you directly. It hurts you directly. But the real issue is, are you sensitive to learn, or you start aping them later on? So likewise, I have many examples. I think in this short time, with more questions, maybe I will answer.
No, absolutely. I think that was very helpful as an answer. One more question that people are asking, and I think everybody wants to know that in this challenging environment of COVID that we are living in, right? We are in a situation where sales are stuck, or sales are probably declining for that matter, right? Cash flows are not happening. Employees are demotivated. People are working from home. There are extra hours being put by people. How do you, as a leader, how do you manage that situation? How do you motivate people? How do you come out of that situation?
Look here, motivation is not a electric switch on, switch off button. First of all, let me tell you.
Sure.
If you have been a company where leadership does not lack credibility, it's a credible leadership, there are less problems.
Sure.
But in a company where leadership has not been credible, the employees will feel used at this time. And they will feel that they are being cosmetically motivated by assurances which they are not sure they will fulfill. And therefore I say, COVID or non-COVID times, leadership should be neutral to crisis. Actually, if you practice leadership the crisis will blow off and employees will stand up to help you out. But anyway, better late than never. That during crisis situation also, if you are willing to change your leadership style and later you also maintain that, then it will work.
Interesting.
So leadership is not, something, it has to be a steady electric current. It
Absolutely.
cannot be, you don't like to talk on a phone where the it's coming and going, the signal. You want a perfect signal. You want a perfect internet signal. Leadership is something like that.
Just, since we've discussed and we can see so many people asking questions and participating about leadership, I've never seen or in any of my learning career of past 20 25 years, any topic on leadership. It's not taught in the school, it's not taught in how the importance of it. Do you think it should become part of education, that we all grow up and
it's
learn?
a part of education right from home. Few things you learn from parents.
True.
I learned from my mother one thing. She was uneducated, but she always used to utter this chaupai of Ramcharitmanas, Raghuvar Reet Sada Chalai, Pran Jai Par Vachan Na Jai. The promise, if you have made a promise, never falter on that. That I learned from him. From my father, I learned discipline. He was a stick-carrying disciplinarian, that we had to study every day by 10. But he would himself be awake after day's work up to 10 o'clock. I learned credibility from my father. They were not educated. So one is what values you are giving. But if you are giving values of fun and enjoyment every time, and if you are not able to polish on values, I think so people learn leadership first in home, then in school, the kind of schools you put, and of course the socialization at home. Home is the biggest nursery for learning leadership, and then come organizations.
Interesting. Also one more thing that, as you rightly mentioned, leadership starts from home. It's like you learn from day one, you build and you gradually develop yourself. I think one of the things that people want to know or understand is that there are multiple hierarchies in organization, right? In some cases, you're not the top guy in the food structure. You're somewhere in between. How do you motivate your seniors? How do you encourage them, or how do you deal with them?
By showing your guts. I have also moved through from a junior to middle management to senior management positions.
True.
And there was time one could not draw much inspiration at some point of time. There is a famous Harvard Business Review article, General Manager in the Middle. We often forget that we have our own power. We have our own style of management. You don't have to ape and you don't have to be cloned to higher management style. Nobody stops you in motivating your own people. I was zonal manager in 2 zones. Nobody told me that this should be your style. I think very often we underestimate ourselves. Very often we live up to under potential that we have got ourselves. Very often we are under communicative. Very often we are under appreciative. Human beings' basic need is appreciation. Every day, even now, in the morning, I find, did I thank 5 people? Did I appreciate a modest effort which someone has made? Did I thank my servant for the good dish he has made? Did I thank my liftman who carried me from 18th floor to ground floor? I think these are very small things which should be part of your DNA. So therefore, you don't have to, yes, when you go to the top, you have more power to implement your vision. And that's how we transformed and everything else. But to say that I don't have power, you see the power of powerless. Have you seen the power of powerless? The beggar near temple. The beggar near temple. We are attracted to him to give him something. That is power of powerless. True. The power of a specialist is that you may be chief secretary. But when the electricity has gone, the uneducated electrician comes, he says, Babu ye dena, Babu wo dena, athwa jara wahan se ye laiye. Power of a specialist.
True.
So everyone has a power. That's what I want to say.
Okay. No, interesting. I think one more quickly on that point I want to ask you. So this was about the seniors in the organizations. What happens is that when you are at the top of the food chain, you can see everybody, the vision of the company, what company is doing, where we are going. But mostly the junior staff in the company would not know, right, what's happening. They may not be able to understand the vision of the company. So they kind of feel demotivated. There's a lot of staff churn that's happening consistently. Everybody seems to be challenged with that. So how do you involve those people who are not necessarily part of the management?
This is the real problem. This is a myth which must be exploded, that an organization is run by management. The organization is run by employees, managed by management.
True.
So when you go to a bank, and if you are happy with clerk, you say X bank is very good. If you are unhappy, you say X bank is wretched bank. We must understand the power of the foot soldier. You can have best of army general, but if your infantry is not good, the man who has to fight. And I think therefore the whole human resource management comes from army, where the first lesson is know your man. And in army, system is so interwoven that there is a bada khana, chota khana every week with the the people who are not up in hierarchy. The senior people have to go and join the food with them. The whole personnel management has come from army. Unfortunately, in our work organization, there are nothing but talks, sermons. People do not demonstrate their connection with the grassroots, and that is the reason that the engagement is very poor in organizations. One of the things in Bank of Baroda, after my taking over, about 20 places I went and met, from manager to messengers, shared with them the problem of the bank, and trust me, they delivered beyond my expectation. We must share with our front line both good news and bad news. And not only that, they have some such brilliant ideas which even my top management could not provide me. They provided me so much insight. There is no time to give examples here, maybe some other point of time, but I'm amazed the kind of sensitivity with regard to the development of business, the kind of problems that they face, the kind of insensitivity of higher management that they don't respond to them. I think all my major agenda of change I developed from the foot soldiers.
True. One more thing, I think as we've taken care of the senior management and the other people in the organization to whom we can work with, there's always criticism at the leadership level, right? The constant criticism that effective leaders are criticized even more because they're on a tough mission. What's your sense on how do the leaders deal with and constant criticism towards their works, towards their ability to deliver what they want to deliver and take the hard decisions?
Leadership, as I said in the beginning, is a difficult vocation, and therefore there is a deficit of leadership. Those who do not want to discomfort themselves, they cannot be leaders. They can't even be managers. Leadership is all about being discomforted. Leadership is all about being vulnerable to criticism. Leadership requires conviction. Leadership requires courage to change. Leadership requires speaking up. Leadership requires showing up. Leadership requires confronting the issues. And I think this is the problem, that our leaders are taught that leadership is about a better car, a better curtain at home, a better dining table. We are more concerned about perquisites in leadership.
True.
And in some organization, even people are perquisites. If I have one secretary, I have 3 secretaries. If I have a 1-ton AC at home, I have 3-ton AC at home till I'm frozen. It's not about perquisites.
Yeah.
It's about responsibilities.
Fair enough. No, I think a very, very interesting point over there again. One quick question somebody's asking me, and it's a very funny question, is that what's the Brahmastra available to everyone to build leaders in an organization, an institution, society, or a family? What's that big Brahmastra that you think is available to all of us?
Well, I don't know about Brahmastras and all that. It would be very churlish to say that. But then, what I have practiced is tough love, tough on performance, and compassion for people.
Meritocracy and compassion.
Let there be no confusion about your style. What happens when we start pretending and we start getting into the popularity game? That what will make me popular? Oh, I want to be nice to everyone. So many people say he's a very nice man. So I have a definition: nice and performing, or nice or non-performing. There are two categories of nice people: nice and non-performing, and nice and performing who are leaders. Tough love, tough with the self, tough with others as far as performance, plus high degree of compassion. If at all, you call it some, I have practiced that with some success.
Yeah, nowadays it's called compassion meritocracy, that you need to have compassion, you need to also be meritocracy at the same time. Yeah, interesting. Just one last quick question, because it'll keep coming. Otherwise, we need just being mindful of the time. I think what people want to know from your journey at Bank of Baroda, especially, is that what were the qualities that led to your success? I know you mentioned all of them in 4 to 5 slides, but few key qualities that people think led to your success in Bank of Baroda.
Yeah, from the day one, I've been some sort of a rebel. Not rebel in the sense of wrecking the system, but thinking differently, challenging the status quo, being uncomfortable about few things, but working on those. For example, when I joined as a direct officer in the bank and I was very unhappy, I not only wrote to top management, I also wrote in a professional journal an article: directly recruited officers in banks, square pegs and round holes. I always kept on writing, expressing myself, and that gave me a lot of inner confidence. You don't always succeed. People think this man is cynical, this man is this and this, that. Believe me, I could have been removed during my probation, and eventually I became chairman of the bank.
Wow.
So and I never planned my career. Trust me, I never planned my career. I never worked for my next promotion. The kind of person I am, I never work for my promotion. What has helped me is to be authentic, real, and own myself, not disown myself, and not living to impress people, but living for certain small values that I hold, those middle class values that I hold, that I learned from my parents.
Wow, interesting. No, so I think just one last quick, before we conclude this great session, enlightening session, I think people want to know. I think people are very concerned about the current COVID scenario, and they are all facing challenges at the management level. They all want to understand what are the important qualities that need to imbibe today to create the sustainable organization post this COVID goes away. Like, how do they create a sustainable organization?
COVID has been a learning opportunity for all of us.
True.
As individuals, as managers, as members of top management. As individuals, it's very important to understand the value of resilience, the value of even fitness, the value of controlling ourselves. That in spite of the fact many young people may feel going out and eating and meeting people, it is to the credit of this young generation that they have restrained themselves. And I'm happy. If COVID was to come anytime, it has come now, when young India has experienced these difficult times and have responded in a very admirable manner, I should say. I see people around, in my family around, that people have really restrained in a very significant manner, putting masks, going, restrained from going out and all that. This is a personal lesson. As managers, I think this innovation of online and working from home, this has given tremendous new opportunity to understand the alternate way of managing our work, managing our life. As management, it has taught us lesson that how our workforce is committed, that somehow they are able to deliver, somehow they want to work. But I think most important thing is to develop a new protocol for working from home. Each home is not blessed with too many rooms. Each home is not, I tell you, organizations should help people to enable them to work from home in terms of providing the kind of working environment, maybe a chair or table that they need to work from, maybe reimburse them for their air conditioning, electricity. Maybe, I mean, we have to now think differently. We cannot burden the employees. And the lastly, I should say that there has to be some protocol on the timings also. I see youngsters working Saturday late night, Sunday people are bothered. There is need to exercise restraint.
Sure.
I must say that employees and junior managers have responded admirably, I tell you, to the organizational requirement during COVID times. My hats off to them. And I think management should show magnanimity and grace and record the sense of appreciation for the new generation employees.
No, great. No, Doctor, thank you so much. I'm guessing, and I believe a lot of people who are here who've attended this session maybe future leaders, and we will probably see a lot of people taking away and learning a lot from you. It's an honor to actually have you on this panel. We are very, very grateful to you for taking out time. I think we at Nimai Capital, myself, Pankaj, Captain, Nisarg, would like to thank you once again for taking out time for this session. Thank you, to all the participants. I definitely take away one point, before I pass it on to you, that one needs to reduce the gap between doing and saying, right? I think we just talk a lot, but do less. I think we all need to do more and talk less. That's at least my takeaway. Sorry, Doctor, you were saying something, please.
No, I'm only saying that many people have asked the question that how did I manage the bank? What is my leadership and all that? Those of the participants who are seriously interested to understand my leadership and the transformation, my book is there, Dare to Lead, which is available on Amazon. And they can look at the book, read it, and get finer dimensions of my leadership style. And the other book is CEO, Chess Master or Gardener.
I think both the books, and also people can follow you on LinkedIn, right? I think you constantly share.
I'm not very active, but yes, I'm trying to be now reviving myself I'm on Twitter with about more than 18,000 followers, although I was very rarely
on
write.
Twitter.
And I'm on LinkedIn also, I'm on Facebook, but I'm not very active in the sense, because I think it should not become burden on me. Absolutely. I should enjoy. So whenever I feel like, I use that.
No, I think people can obviously share their questions with us if they want, and
and they can interact with me. They can write to me on my email, and my email you can again show on that. My email is akk1948@gmail.com. So it has been great pleasure. Sagar, it has been great pleasure personally for me, because a lot of people have been writing to me on LinkedIn, especially the group who attended my program in Georgia. I especially remember the people who attended my program in Durban, I remember, and the several conferences of chartered accountants in Bahrain, in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai. My thanks to all of them for joining in this. And
it's an intriguing session with you all the time. So thank you once again. We are honored and look forward to more interactions of ours in the future. Thank you all the participants, all the attendees, and thank you to my Capital team once again. And look forward to staying in touch with all of you guys and for the next session as well. Thank you once again, Doctor.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.